So what we're talking about today is Breaking Point's hosts that are lying again about forced to vote. Now, I'll show you this. Remember, Ilhan Omar tweeted this out, part of the squad. She said, yes, we can, with a slim Dem majority in the next Congress. Anything can be possible. Turns out nothing was possible. Absolutely nothing. It will literally take 5 courageous progressive members to get concessions on progressive policies. There is literally not one courageous progressive in Congress. Literally isn't one.
You know, it's the difference between stand-ups and improv people. Like, that's why they didn't like your sort.
That's right.
Because these are improv people.
These are
very different mentality.
Very different.
They're more yes and.
Yes. That's why Stephen Colbert. Yeah. That's right. So look what they're doing here. So they took Ilhan Omar's advice and they got all these concessions for their vote for speaker. And the reason why you wanted to do a force to vote, a Medicare for all, reason why you would do that is because sometimes it gets members on the record so people can't make excuses. Sometimes these votes create real political pressure that forces developments. And sometimes we vote for historical record. Let the future generations know that we did everything we could. So
force the vote. Hashtag force the vote.
Hashtag force the vote. They didn't do anything, right? And so now people are trying to rewrite history. And what they actually did was turn on the activists who wanted them to do something, force to vote, and get something for their vote. For what they did was they turned on us, and they said that we were committing violence against AOC. That's what they said, and that we don't know what we're doing, and that we were children, and all kinds of names, right? So now they're rewriting history. Now, Krystal Ball was actually for force to vote, very tepidly, but she was for it when we were doing it, right? So, because she knew it would be bad to come out against it. But now she is going to run interference for the squad. Watch this.
And then the last thing you have to say about this is, this is the identical situation that the squad was in last time around when Democrats had a very narrow majority in the House. There was pressure on them to do something with their numbers to get their own concessions, whether that was key committee positions or whether it was certain votes on the floor of the House. And they have completely taken a different tack. And I think we see now.
So she's implying, she goes, they completely took a different tack. They didn't take any tack.
They shouldn't be called a squad because a squad does things
together.
Yeah, right.
They didn't do anything. So she's pretending like they chose a different strategy to achieve progressive goals. That's what she's saying right there. I'll play it for you again.
Oh, well,
okay.
She just want to alienate the squad. They're our best hope.
So watch this. This is amazing. This is like Kyle Kalinske sleight of hand right here. Watch this.
And they have completely taken a different tack. And I think we see now with the level of concessions that this group has already been able to extract from McCarthy that and the way that the squad has been completely sidelined in the Democratic Party, that was clearly the wrong approach.
Oh.
So she's now pretending that the squad has been sidelined in the Democratic Party, and they didn't see that coming. They didn't know that they would be sidelined by Nancy Pelosi. They didn't really know that. So she's, again, this is the second lie. Right. So they didn't take a tack. They didn't have a strategy to get progressive goals met. They didn't do frickin' anything. And now she just made that lie. There's another one coming. Hang on.
They thought they could play an inside game. They thought that would be the way to ultimately pursue and achieve their policy objective.
Now, that is 100,000% lie. That's what she looks like when she's lying. If you wanted to know what Krystal Ball looks like when she's lying, that's what she looks like. Because that is a fucking lie. They didn't have a strategy. They didn't do anything except turn on the activists, lie about what they were doing, and then roll over for the corporate machine and vote for everything Nancy Pelosi told them to. They didn't oppose her one bit.
Also, I keep bringing this up, but they also were heavens to Murgatroyd. What if Kevin McCarthy becomes speaker? I can't get over that. That was the big, because then Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, that's right. But that's not this. I don't know if the squad said that, but what she's saying, but lots of people defending them said that. You're right about that, Kurt. But what she's saying right here are 3 huge lies. So she could keep her access with the squad or her whatever party she wants to be invited to, or keep her donor money. I don't know what. I don't know. I can only speculate. But those are three big lines. Do you see how slippery she is when she lies? You wouldn't catch it the first time. She's like, oh, she's saying that the squad was wrong. That's what it looks like, right? Looks like she said, oh, the squad is wrong. She's saying they were wrong.
Yeah, right.
No, what she is lying about.
Wasn't she a politician? I mean,
Yes, she was.
politics,
She wanted to be a politician. Like Jenks, she couldn't get elected. But what she is trying to make you think is that they just made a mistake. That they actually they had a different idea on how to meet different different tack on how to meet their progressive goal. They never had one they never had an idea on how to get there. They didn't have any intention of doing any of that. And what that's called is a lie. That's a lie.
Jimmy, they had a strategy.
Okay, what was their strategy?
To get on the cover of Rolling Stone with Nancy Pelosi.
And they got on it. They got on it.
Got that.
Doing it.
Success.
We're going to get, don't bring
You
in
don't have
Paul.
time for your green dreams or whatever.
So I'll play that for you again. So now that you know what they are, watch how slippery she is and how she presents these.
And then the last thing you have to say about this is, this is the identical situation that the squad was in last time around when Democrats had a very narrow majority in the House. There was pressure on them to do something with their numbers to get their own concessions, whether that was key commitments.
Yeah, it was called forced to vote. I know you don't want to mention it.
If you're going to fight corporate media, why are you still being corporate?
Why are you still being corporate?
That's corporate bullshit.
Exactly. And here she goes again. Now here she's going to do run interference and lie to you about what the squad actually did. Here it comes.
Positions or whether it was certain votes on the floor of the House. And they have completely taken a different tack. And I think we see now with the level of concessions that this group has already been able to extract from McCarthy and the way that the squad has been completely sidelined in the Democratic Party, that was clearly the wrong approach. They thought they could play an inside game. They thought that would be the way to ultimately pursue and achieve their policy objectives.
They weren't playing any game. They weren't playing an outside game. They weren't playing an inside game. And you're lying to protect them right now. And you're getting something out of it. I don't know exactly what, but you are getting it. Maybe it's to keep Ryan Grimm, who's also a co-host on your show, his access to the squad, because those are the only people they give interviews to is to Ryan Grimm. So maybe she's lying so she can keep her access to the squad because they get all the interviews with the squad. Squad don't go anywhere else in progressive media except to Ryan Grimm because they know Ryan Grimm will protect them and let them lie like he did when he interviewed Pramila Jayapal and she said that McCarthy could become speaker if they forced the vote and he didn't push back on her. So that's my speculation as to why she's lying right now, and that is exactly what she's doing. And believe me, her audience knows it. They're onto them. People have sniffed out Rachel, what is her name? Krystal Ball. People have sniffed her out. And you go through their comments, a lot of their videos, which I do, because I have that kind of time. And people are sniffing them out. And their subscriber count has trickled to it's down to a trickle, right? So they're stuck at around 840,000. And this is why. Because they're not real. They're not really going to push back. And this is mealy-mouthed bullshit. And she's protecting her access for Ryan Grimm to the squad. Let's see how she ends it.
And it just has not ultimately been the case. So in terms of political strategy and what works, it helps to have a few sort of asshole bomb throwers.
Yeah, so that's how she's going to talk about people who actually stand up to the establishment. She calls them assholes. That's her big idea. So now the people who are standing up, extracting concessions for their vote for speaker, she calls them assholes. So apparently, if the squad would have done that, they would have been asshole bomb throwers instead of principled progressives using their leverage.
Yeah, well, just the very concept of a squad is so followery, improv. It sounds like an improv group.
So now, her co-host, another host at Breaking Points, is Ryan Grimm, who's also the DC bureau chief for The Intercept and for that billionaire-funded rag that can't tell the truth about Syria, can't tell the truth about Russiagate, can't tell the truth about Ukraine, can't tell the truth about forced to vote. And here we are. He says progressive. So this is him trying to pretend that the progressives that the squad actually got something. You remember when they got PAYGO? So without getting into the weeds, PAYGO is nothing, right? So he's saying, look, they won the rules change that would allow Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and other big ticket agenda items to be exempted from PAYGO. So if they abided by the rules of PAYGO, you couldn't do any of those things, Medicare, Green New Deal. And he said, look, they got him to agree to that. The problem is they'd already agreed to that. That's why Ryan was lying. They had already agreed to that. This is from the Huffington Post. However, the Congressional Progressive Caucus effectively decided it was not worth tanking the entire set of rules governing the new Congress to jettison PAYGO, since they had received assurances from the Democratic leaders that the provision would always be waived to allow progressive bills to proceed to the House floor. So that was before the negotiation over forced to vote. That's where it stood. So they got nothing. Ryan Grimm knew that they got nothing, and he was lying to protect them, just like she's lying to protect. It's very subtle lies, right? You don't say, well, they did get a PAYGO exemption. They did do that. Yeah, but it's a lie. And he knows it's a lie because they know it's a lie, and they get together and think of what lies to fucking tell us.
What?
And so there it is. That's the lie. So now Brianna Joy Gray, Bernie Sanders' former press secretary, confronted him and asked him about his constant gaslighting for the squad over forced to vote.
All I know is how they're behaving. And at the time, Ryan, the fact that you were driving that point home so hard and really advocating for the idea that they had truly won something that was super relevant and consequential seemed like it was, in the terms of the internet, carrying water for these squad members to.
So what she just pointed out was what I just pointed out, that he was lying for them. She calls it carrying water for them. He was lying for them around forced to vote and this issue. She's just pointing it out. And about PAYGO, she's saying you're pretending that they got a huge win. It is nothing. Okay.
Whom the rest of us perceived as having pretty obviously lost an important fight that they could.
So everybody else sees that the squad lost an important fight that they could have won, and but then the rest of it goes behind a paywall. So I don't know what bullshit he said back, but I do know that when he got Pramila Jayapal, the head of the Progressive Caucus, on his show, and she said that if they did force the vote, that McCarthy could become speaker, he didn't push back on it at all. He let her say it. And that's why they go to Ryan Grimm to give those interviews, because they know Ryan Grimm is a good boy who takes billionaire money and protects politicians. That's who Brian Grimm is. He's here to take simple morality issues and make them seem complicated. So that's what he's. He was for squashing the strike of the railroad workers. He took the side of the railroad against the workers. That's the guy who's now on breaking points with Krystal and Sagar. That's who they want to associate themselves with, and that's why Krystal just lied to her own audience about what the squad's role was in Force the Vote. Why? Because he gets access to them, and he's now a host on Breaking Points, and they're all in their toxic, corrupt little fucking cabal, and it's not working. By the way, their own fans see right through it. Anybody want to jump in?
It's like a mobile Jen Psaki, like
yes,
have remote Jen Psakis everywhere to just spew the PR.
That's what he is. Yeah. And so here's some of the lies he was trying to tell. Remember when he tried to go after Justin Jackson, who was the former football player here in Los Angeles, and it's for the Lions. He had a great week last week. And it's a tactic. He's talking about forced to vote. You mean withholding your vote, using leverage to get something for your vote. He goes, it's a tactic. Sometimes it's smart, sometimes it's not. It depends on the circumstances. It's third down and you need 1 yard. Running might be the smart call. If it's 3rd and 30, running isn't a smart call. It's sadly not. So that's him saying forced to vote was dumb and a bad idea.
He's trying to do the thing of it wouldn't have passed. Like we wanted to threaten the people.
Right. And look at all the attention it would have got, Medicare for All. Mm-hmm. Right now, all week, everybody's talking about Matt Gaetz and the right wing holding out their speaker vote. And we would, if the progressive squad would have did this, we would have been talking about Medicare for All for a whole week during a deadly pandemic on every TV station. That would have been a huge win, and I'm going to show you why in a second. But Theory is lying, and then all of a sudden, Justin Jackson comes in and says it's not 3rd and 30 either. It was 3rd and 30 when Bernie started running, and hardly anyone supported Medicare for All. It's actually 4th and 1 on the goal line, down 14 in the fourth quarter, and they're kicking a field goal. How about go for it and get us closer to taking the lead? That's a real football player using this nerd trying to use a football analogy, and this guy comes in and bodies him. That's a real football player from the NFL. He says they're worried, meaning the squad, they're worried if they go for it. Not only are they certain they won't make it, but they might be tackled in the backfield and turn it over on downs, leaving their movement worse off than it was to begin with. So he's saying that the Medicare for All movement would have been worse off had they fought for it. Hey, look at all those gains we made in the last 2 years since we didn't do force the vote on Medicare for All. We would have lost all those. They didn't do shit.
It's like
so this is again, you couldn't tell a bigger lie than Ryan Grimm is telling right now. And that's because that's his job, is to lie to protect politicians. That's his job. And that's who Breaking Points wants as a co-host on their fucking show. Keep that in mind. And here he is. And Justin Jackson bodies him again. He says, I'm sorry, man. This is a horrible analogy and the type of thinking that gets coaches fired. You have to take risks, especially when the situation is advantageous. You're arguing for the field goal. The safe play actually increases your chances of losing the game and not vice versa. Yeah. So he's saying, he's making up this thing that nobody ever heard before, that if you fight for something, it sets it back.
Jimmy.
That's not a real thing. He made that up so he can find way. So he's taking a simple morality issue and he's trying to make it complicated because he's paid by billionaires to gaslight progressives, and he's fucking doing it on Breaking Points. Go ahead, Kurt.
You know how slavery was ended with no fighting. It was going to just end.
Well, we wanted to have a bill that would end slavery, but we were afraid it's going to set slavery back to even talk about it.
Yeah.
So this was what he was doing yesterday on Twitter. I'm begging people to stop pretending that Jimmy Dore invented the idea of using leverage in the year of our Lord 2021. So this is another great. This is right out of a CIA textbook. What he's doing there is changing the subject, trying to pretend like this was what we were talking about. Like people wanted to give Jimmy Dore credit for inventing leverage in politics. I never even wanted credit for it. I gave credit to the DSA. They're the one who came up with the idea.
AOC was saying it.
AOC was the one who said we need to force a vote for Medicare for All on the House floor. And you know who else said it 30 years ago? Nancy Pelosi. So I didn't think of it. I never said I thought of it. He's now changing the subject, trying to pretend that this is it.
Well, I am going to pretend that you did now.
He says the criticism was always about, the criticism, was always about, a vote on the House, the floor, for get by at least, 200 at least. And, that was always about. That's my Ryan Grimm. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
No, that's pretty good.
Ryan Grimm.
He says the criticism was always about the demand for a vote on the House floor. No, you again tried to muddy the water, saying don't ask for that. Ask for this. We picked the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, and they wouldn't even do that. He knows that, and this is him trying to muddy the waters again. Brianna Joy Gray comes in and says, that's not true. We surfaced large numbers of demands. The floor vote was just one of them. Hey, they could have picked anything. We picked Medicare for All because everybody on the left agreed with it, and half the Republican Party agrees with it now. So that's why we chose that. They could have chosen anything. They said they were working to get their own thing. They were negotiating behind the scenes, and they weren't. And then Ryan Grimm said they were. So she's just lying again. What I had to come in on that thread and tell him was, no, you explained that McCarthy, he came on my show, and he explained that McCarthy could not become speaker, and his boss, Cenk Uygur at the Young Turks, was lying when he said that McCarthy could. I thank you for clarifying that on my show. You then went on to gaslight about the squad voting for Pelosi without extracting concessions was the right move. It wasn't, and you knew it. He didn't say that on my show, but he said that after he got off my show on Twitter and everywhere else. And it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his job depends on not understanding it, and that is Ryan Grimm. Here he is trying to pretend, this is back when we were doing Force to Vote, that nobody would cover it if you did it. This is what he says. He says, that's all fine, but we already know who supports it. So that's why you want to do a vote. Find out who supports it, who it doesn't. We can primary, all that stuff. He says, and I can promise you it would get zero press coverage because the press doesn't cover bills that can't pass both chambers.
Really?
Matt Orfalea says, you're already fucking covering it. And look what's happening right now.
Yeah.
The entire corporate media structure has shut down and is covering this force the vote wall to wall in real time. So that's Ryan Grimm. Again, it doesn't matter if people see that he's a moron and he doesn't know as much about politics as a pothead comedian, even though that's his only fucking skill. He doesn't care because he knows his billionaire money will continue to come in and his friends in the establishment will continue to protect him. All the people who work at The Intercept, the Ken Klippenstein, they're going to protect him. All his powerful politicians will protect him. All the people at TYT and people at MSNBC and CNN, they're all going to protect him. That's why he feels comfortable and confident enough, this Breaking Points host, to go and lie like that. Because that's what that is. You see what's happening. Or do you think he's just the dumbest guy you ever met in your life? He's either lying or he's dumber than me. He's dumber than Matt Orfalea, and me and Matt Orfalea are fucking C students.
Jimmy, the media point is really important, and I haven't heard you make it yet, but I think it's crucial. Imagine if right now, the media spectacle we're seeing around Kevin McCarthy, imagine even like a fraction of that media coverage about a fight over Medicare for all, or any other progressive demand. Because, the idea that the media wouldn't cover a group of lawmakers withholding their vote for the House Speaker nominee, that's just been like resoundingly disproven by what we're seeing right now. So
they cover it, but then they would stop when it got to the vote. They're like, oh, this ain't their guys.
So progressives did the same thing. And I mean, it's a counterfactual. We don't know exactly how it would go, but certainly there'd be some media attention. And whether the issue was Medicare for all, as you advocated, or one of the other demands, there'd be some attention on progressive issues. I think that's pretty fair to assume.
Pretty fair, yeah.
Well, that's why he's saying the whole goal is for that to not happen.
I like what this guy, so he's still trying to change the subject. He says, again, my objection was to the demand you were making, which I thought made no sense. Not the idea of making demands in general. No, you were there again trying to muddy the waters and make a simple morality issue seem complicated like you did. And this guy says, no, Mr. Grimm, you are a liar. It has been shown you are a repeated liar, and now you look like a kitten trying to cover your shit in a litter box. The pothead has skewered you again. It's not a good look. Here's guest and friend of the show, Sabby. She's going to do some violence on Ryan Grimm.
It seems like every time we try to critique them, you come in pretty quickly to defend them. You're the one that has access to them. We don't. And it just seems like you're kind of there to run cover for them. As long as people like you keep defending them, they're not going to be held accountable and they're not going to change. They can easily ignore or avoid us. But when the people who have access to them don't push back on them or say, no, you guys are not doing your job, that would be different, I think.
Yes. Yes. I have pushed them to do that.
And what did they say about that, Ryan? What about all the people who canvassed for AOC? What about all the people who phone banked for her? What about all the money that a lot of us donated to AOC and the rest of them? They took money from working class people, Ryan. I was on the ground. I saw them take money from people who really didn't have it to give. And for them to just sell us out like that, I'm going to be vocal about that because that's not right. Oftentimes what I have seen is yourself and some of your comrades kind of coming down on activists for those of us trying to organize on the outside. Force the vote, straight from the DSA handbook. That is something that they are supposed to be doing in reference to Medicare for all. Chose not to do it. Not even one of them came to the town hall. General strike. So like last year at RBN, we hosted a general strike summit. And you did it too, Ryan. You and some of your colleagues came in and you guys were like criticizing us before it even happened. And the whole point of that summit
was that the Medicare for all march?
Well, there was that too. I do feel like people like you guys can come and attack activists, but you don't want to attack the politicians who are supposed to be doing what we're out on the ground doing anyway.
I don't remember saying anything negative about the general strike. What did I do?
What did I do? I don't remember being an asshole to activists. I do it so often, I can't remember this specific time.
I do. You said that on the lines of something of it being foolish.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on. I hope I wasn't too
Listen
harsh.
to how he ends.
No, not at all. Hey, not at all.
What?
She says, I hope I wasn't too hard on you. He goes, no, not at all.
Jesus. Who made, I can't remember the name
This
of
is
the person.
Turncoat Don made this.
That's right. Turncoat Don made where him as the inflatable airplane
Oh,
pilot.
yes.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah. So here is Shama Sawant. Now, if you know who Shama Sawant is, she's a socialist who's gotten elected. She actually has power. She uses her leverage. She got people $15 minimum wage in Seattle. And guess who she had to fight to get that? The Democratic mayor and the Democratic city council. That's who she had to fight. That's her word, she told me. And she's the one who says the path for progressives inside the Democratic Party leads to a graveyard. And she's right. And this is what she has to say about Ryan Grimm.
But that's one part of the story, right? The other part of the story is all the Ryan Grimms of this world. We have to be very clear. They are cynical purveyors. They are snake oil salesmen who are very consciously peddling the Democratic Party support. And, I've seen on Twitter, some people are tweeting like, hey, are you a masochist? Why are you going towards Ryan Grimm? Why are you going to these podcasts if you know that you're not going to get any agreement on these things? But we have to be clear. He's not engaging in some self-sacrifice, and it is not about him. It's about people like him. People like him are determinedly peddling this line, even more so now because the Democratic establishment recognizes that this is very clear as a betrayal in the eyes of hundreds of thousands unconvinced and perhaps even millions of workers. That is why they need their spokespersons everywhere peddling that line to the extent that they're able to push it forward. So they're not engaging in some honest debate in any way. They are very doggedly pushing their line because that allows the AOCs and the Ilhan Omars and the Pramila Jayapals to then, be behind the scenes so they don't have to dirty their hands. They have the Ryan Grimms and whoever else to be the punching bag for them. But in reality, there is nothing genuine or honest about it. And their job, the job of these kinds of so-called analysts who appear on all these shows and write all these articles, their job is to obscure the reality as much as they can, even in the face of this spectacular betrayal.
So what Ryan Grimm's job is what she just told you what his job is to distract you. It's to, let me play it again. As much as they can, to obscure the reality as much as obscure the reality of what's going on, to obscure the reality of forced to vote, to obscure the reality of the betrayal by the squad, to obscure the reality of what happened when the Democratic Party squashed a strike, were strike breakers, and the squad went along with it. He was there to obscure that reality, just like he's there to obscure the reality right now of what's happening with the Republican, the right wing, extracting concessions for their vote for speaker. That's what Ryan Grimm's job is there. Not to give you, he's not there to report the facts to you. He's not there to inform you. Ryan Grimm is there to obscure the facts of what's really going on, to protect politicians. And he's a co-host at Breaking Points. And if you want to get your news from fucking Breaking Points and a piece of shit like that, have at it. Because thank God they're around, because it's good for the contrast on my show. So they leave me a big lane of having authentic, non-billionaire paid people give the news. Now, billionaire funded people go on Breaking Points now. He's on their cast. He's a host of Breaking Points. And now you saw Krystal lie, just like they're very slippery with their lies. What Krystal was doing was obscuring the facts of what actually happened. And that's what Ryan Grimm does. And that's who Breaking Points is.
PR. It's PR. And it's not incompetence with Ryan.
It's not incompetence.
It's malice.
It's malice.
And I wouldn't even believe you that it was had I not had to watch all these clips of him doing that nonstop.
So congratulations to Breaking Points. And I feel sorry for Sagar.
He might be at a breaking point, and I feel bad for him too.
He might be at a breaking point. Who knows? I encourage him to go out on his own, do his own show. Anything you'd like to say at the end of this?
No, except I think this whole episode has been a big vindication for people who advocated forced to vote, and I'm happy to see it.
Me too.
People notice it too. I'm surprised at who notices that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Give me one person that would make me feel happy.
I don't want to destroy it. I don't want to destroy them.
Was it Judd Apatow?
It was Judd.
Was it Judd Apatow?
Of all people, it was Judd.
It was Judd. I figured it was. Everybody, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles in January and February in Los Angeles. And then we're going to Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets and become a premium member while you're there.